Hello, movie patient, and welcome to Film Therapy. I am Brienne, also known as Miss Movies, also known as your film therapist. I'm not a real therapist, but I play one on the internet just for this show. And as with every session of film therapy, I always have a guest patient. And my guest patient today is Rachel Cushing. Hello, Rachel. Welcome. Come take a seat.
Hello, Brienne. Hello, everybody in the chat room. Thanks for having me on.
It's the waiting room.
Oh, the waiting
Oh,
room.
yes.
Forgive me.
But I can see the clear mistake. Thank you all for joining us. If you are in the waiting room, we're happy that you're here. Now, you are Rachel J. Cushing.
That's
What is
correct.
the J?
It's Jay.
Oh, just J.
It's Jaye.
Okay. I
So
like
yeah,
it. I like
yeah.
it.
It's after my mom.
Oh, is that her first name or is it also her middle
It
name?
is her first name. See, my grandparents thought she was going to be a boy up until the moment she was born and
Hmm.
named her Russell J after my
Okay.
grandfather. She came out a girl, so they said, okay, we'll flop it. We'll call her Jay, and they altered Russell to Rochelle. So her
Oh,
name is
okay.
Jay Rochelle. But it's caused her a lot of problems through life because Jay is still a man's name, and like she'll give her credit card, and people
Hmm.
won't believe. She's like, this is your husband's card,
Huh.
not yours. So it's caused a few issues.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
little
Didn't
tidbit.
know. I always love the switcheroo of, oh, wait, we have a girl, or oh, wait, we have a boy. I was supposed to be named Ryan.
I
And
was gonna
then,
be a David if I was
yeah,
a boy. At least my parents like planned for both. They were like
okay,
Rachel
good.
for a girl, David for a boy.
They were going to stay with Ryan for
Which
girl,
could
which
work
it
for a girl. Yep.
works. But then my grandma stepped in and was like, no, no, let's not do that. But I did know a Ryan, a female Ryan
I
growing
did
up,
too.
and
Yeah.
it's a fine name. It's a
hmm
fine name,
I think it
ladies
was a
and
soap
gentlemen.
opera thing, right? Like some famous
Probably.
soap opera character was a woman was named Ryan, and then it like caused a craze there for a little while. I think.
Maybe that was
Don't
the
quote me on that.
situation. If you've never watched this show before, here's how it works. I am going to ask Rachel three questions. It's the same three questions that I asked to each movie patient, and that is, what is a film that inspires you? What is a film or a scene from a film that triggers a memory for you? Perhaps it's painful, maybe it's happy. And what is a film that helps you through difficult times? So I started this show because I suffer from depression, and I find that movies help me cope or help me deal with that. And it's a way of escaping my sad life. No, I don't have a sad I don't consider myself having a sad
Sad
life. Sometimes
moments.
I'm just sad
Yep.
in life. And that's just what happens. You know.
I know.
I
I
mean,
do.
we all have sadness.
hmm
We cannot deny that. I would say, "Oh, Rachel, what is your sadness?" But let's go a little bit lighter
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Who are you? All
Okay.
those great things. Why are you here? How do we know you?
You've come to know me only fairly recently. If you're a watcher of Collider or Schmoes Knows or anything like that, I owe sort of my recent YouTube status to those guys, and that's how I very luckily met Brienne. I'm an editor. I'm a behind the scenes person by trade. I went to film school on the East Coast, moved out to LA, been here 15 years doing the whole living the dream thing. And I love movies, I love television, I love books, I love all of that. And I just got to be friends with people through the Schmoes first and foremost. And then once they started the Schmodown and we're looking for some female contestants, I got roped into trying that out. Turned out
Mhm.
I'm halfway decent at movie trivia, so I have been riding that wave. We'll see how long it lasts. But it's also
Yeah.
opened up opportunities to do more podcasts and just talk about things that I love, to do the Game of Thrones talk on Collider, which has been amazing because that's another love of mine. So there's been a lot of really crazy opportunities these last 6 months for me in the whole YouTube sphere, including being able to do this
Being
with you.
able to do this. I'm glad you're here. And I feel like we first digitally met when profiles like
Oh,
started up and
yes.
started going because we
Yep.
were avid watchers of profiles with Malone and Mance,
Amazing show. Look it
which is
up.
yeah on
Still
the
out on
Popcorn
YouTube.
Talk network. Now has have you noticed that it's like changed? Have you seen this on there on the iTunes feed for profiles with Malone and Mance?
Uh
It's
oh.
if you look it up, you'll find I don't know if they've changed the icon, but someone took over that feed from Popcorn Talk. It's now like a new show, but I think they still have the old profiles on there on the catalog. It's weird. I don't know what's happened.
I think we might have to call Scott Mance and find out if like there's something he needs to tell us about the show because they've
Uh,
been hoping for now at this point a couple of years that it would go on to come back in some other
mhm.
incarnation. But I also know Scott and Alicia are crazy busy people, and it's hard. But at least those 50 episodes exist,
Right.
and I do revisit them on YouTube every once in a while because they're just so well put together and just talk about so many movies that I love.
Right.
So
It's one of those shows that just it it's so nice to have so much information in such a short time.
and
Like I don't know how they do it. It
and
was like 50
presented,
minutes.
yeah, and but presented in a really fun way, like
Mhm.
their way of counting down their top 5 and favorite scenes and favorite moments and trivia, and they would like quiz each other, and then they would
Mhm.
get ridiculous guests calling in
They
half the
would.
time, like the
They
Hitchcock
would.
Blondes episode. I was like, I can't even believe this is
Mhm.
amazing. So yeah, it's was a lot of fun, and I met not just you, I met a bunch of people online, like all my Facebook profile friends, and who were my online friends before I started doing the whole Crusher thing and everything else,
Mhm.
and that was, you know, the gateway, which was great, and I love having met so many other movie lovers through it.
Through that, I've definitely loved meeting a lot of people as well. I used to have a profile shirt, but it didn't fit right.
Aw.
So I always tried to like tie it up and it just didn't never worked. And I was like, this is just I'm gonna have to abandon this shirt because there's nothing I can do with it at this point.
I'll have to
Also,
break mine out.
I lost like 20 pounds. So then that was
Nice.
another issue. It wouldn't fit anymore. So that's a good issue.
True.
Maybe I can buy
Silver
another
lining.
one. I wonder if it's still up there.
They might be. If
I'll
not,
have to
Scott
look
might
at it.
have
I could ask him.
some.
I could ask him. All right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some
Okay.
questions right now. Let's get into our first question, which is what is a film that inspires you?
You know, it's really funny. I have watched a lot of these episodes because you've interviewed a lot of our friends, and I love the idea of this show. I think is great. I did not suspect that this would be the hardest question, and yet it turned out to
Right.
be the hardest question
It
for me.
is.
Like there's some knee jerk responses, and then I was thinking about the different ways to be inspired, and your other guests have said the same thing, and I hemmed and hawed, and I literally said, okay, you're going to sit down, you're going to have Brienne ask you this question, and then you're just going to say the first one that comes
It's
to your
just going to
mind
come to you.
because there's so many possibilities.
Hmm.
And so, with that, I'm going to go with hmm, my favorite Ron Howard film, Apollo 13.
Oh, all right. I've
And
seen it.
good. All right. We're off to a good start.
Hooray.
The reason why I think is for it on a bunch of levels, but like sort of the idea, so much has been happening in the world
Hmm.
that a lot of times I find myself sort of thinking that I'm losing faith in like humanity.
Hmm.
And I like movies like this that sort of show A, based on real events, and B, it's not, you know, it's not about the Apollo 11 mission, which was the first, you know, Neil Armstrong, first people on the
Right.
moon, and the what we accomplished as a nation coming together and doing that. But this was the nation coming together and fixing a problem and saving lives, and you know, showing what science can do, what, you know, a group of collective minds can accomplish, how people banded together around the country, you know, even just to say prayers or something like that. Like there's
Hmm.
just an idea of coming together, whereas I feel like so much in the world right now is about splitting apart.
Yes. Oh my
So there's
gosh.
just, not to get crazy politically heavy here, but there's something very uplifting about that feeling. And then, like I said, I think it's Ron Howard's best movie,
Hmm.
direction wise, acting wise. The score, James Horner's score, is beautiful. You can't go wrong with Tom Hanks as Jim Lovell. I mean, he plays the everyman, and Jim Lovell was the
He's so
everyman
good.
astronaut. I
So
was a
good.
huge astronaut geek when I was younger.
Hmm.
I used to be able to name every Apollo mission and every astronaut that was
Wow.
each mission. I don't think I
Did
could
you
do
want
it
to be
anymore.
Sally Ride?
That certainly was hugely influential in the
Hmm.
80s. I was never a science math person, so I sort
Okay.
of kind of knew at a young age that like that kind of career was not going to be in the cards for me. But there's just something so inspirational about real life heroes that aren't sports stars
Yes.
or you know soldiers, and those, they all have their place, but like these are kind of like geeky heroes in a way, and then, like the
It's true. It's so
scientists
true.
too, like Tom Hanks's miniseries From the Earth to the Moon is an amazing look
Mm.
at the whole space program and everything, and that HBO did a few years, or actually somewhere around the same time as Apollo 13, I believe. But just that entire era and the entire idea of, you know, Kennedy's mission and people banding together to do it, and then for 13 it being, you know, things went wrong and they had to, square peg round hole the whole situation
Hmm.
to get them home safe, and they did. So there's, yeah, I just find that story inspiring.
It is an inspiring story, and it's one that it's as a movie, it's something that I definitely need to watch again, and I'm sure that I will watch again because my kids, I'll want to introduce them to it as
Definitely.
well. My daughter and I just read. They have this biography series that's for kids.
Okay.
It's so well written. We read about Sally Ride, and so she's very interested in that. She was like what got her into these biography series was Amelia Earhart, and just
Nice.
my father-in-law telling her about Amelia Earhart, and then
Okay.
she like started. We read the book together. She's 6, and then she would search for YouTube videos on Amelia Earhart to learn
Wow.
more, and I just thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. And then we went to Jane Goodall and learned all
These are
about Jane
great,
Goodall, and
great people to be reading about.
she is still alive. She's like, all the books that we've read, Sacagawea
Mhm.
and, Amelia Earhart and Sally Ride, they're not alive anymore. But
Right.
Jane Goodall is still alive.
You should
Like,
introduce her to Gorillas in the Mist, Sigourney
I
Weaver.
should.
That's a very good movie and
That would be
inspiring
interesting.
as well.
I wonder if it's would be age appropriate, like if it would hold her interest.
Hmm. It's been a while since I've seen it. I mean, if not right now, within the next few years,
Hmm.
I would think that
Yeah.
she would be able to for sure.
But I do like the idea of real life
Yeah.
heroes, and the Apollo mission is definitely one of those inspiring ones, as well as recently with Hidden Figures.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, there's sort of like the unsung hero aspect to it. Like I
Hmm.
like the three astronauts that were in, the capsule doing their thing up there to stay alive, but it was the guys on the ground and then the guys
Hmm.
whose names and the people whose names we don't know that like, were, very heroic in finding a way to save them. And Hidden Figures, shone a light on a different aspect of that, of how, getting the race to the moon and to space and all those scientific discoveries, like one person didn't accomplish that, two
Right.
people didn't accomplish, 100 people didn't accomplish that, thousands of people did. So I like, that we get to see the various stories through the
Hmm.
medium of film.
And especially with Sheldon being such the villain in that. And I'm like, I see those signs for young Sheldon, and I'm like, no, what are we doing and why?
And watch that
Guys.
get like 20 million views on its pilot when it comes out.
It will.
Those CBS
Oh, it
comedies.
will. That probably needs an after show. I bet it could do pretty well, guys. Probably. Although I don't know if that audience would actually have access to internet. So who knows?
I like the people in the chat are talking about other really cool space movies.
Oh,
And
yes. Tell
Star
us.
Drew, Space Cowboys is a lot of fun. Like that is a
Mm.
really great movie to, the aspect of, an older generation.
Do I have
Oh, you got
I
something
have the
there.
right stuff
Oh,
somewhere.
that is
Oh,
one of
here
my
it is.
all-time favorites. That is a
It's
fabulous
still
movie,
wrapped.
which basically means I know what your next 6 degrees. I don't even care who your guest is, like off that
This
movie.
is like a 3 hour plus movie.
Oh,
This is
so
gonna
good though.
take me 3 days minimum to watch, but I do need to watch it. I stole this from my in-laws off of their shelf, and I was like, I probably need to see that. Probably a
Especially with
good
Sam
thing.
Shepard having just passed
I
away,
love
who's
Sam Shepard.
he is brilliant in this, and it's not like there's nobody has a major role. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
Ed Harris, but like there's equal weight put on the different characters involved in that story. It's fabulous. I love
Yes,
that movie.
and then there's always Armageddon.
Always, always. You can bring it back to Armageddon every time.
I mean, come on, guys, that's one of the best space movies. I remember watching Space Camp,
Oh, geez, deep cut.
but
I can't remember it very well. I
I
know I
don't
saw it when
remember
I
it
was
at
younger.
all.
Yeah.
Was it the girl from Back to the Future? I can't remember. Guys, I just remember watching it and then I was done. It was like my sister had it on. Anyways, let's move it on to
Okay.
our next question, which is what is a film or a scene from a film that triggers a memory for you? Perhaps it's painful, maybe it's happy.
So I had a bit of a crisis this morning because I this was the easiest question for me based on a movie I'd recently rewatched and a thing that happened to me. And I was like, this is perfect for film therapy. And then this morning I was scrolling through YouTube and it had a bunch of videos and it's like, things for you to watch. And I'm
Hmm.
subscribed to your channel and I saw this week's 6 Degrees.
Okay.
And I saw that it said that you did Election and Reese Witherspoon movies, which means you just spent an hour this week talking about the movie that I want to talk about right
Yes.
now. So you have seen it. I can guarantee you that at this point. But the
Uh-oh.
movie that I want to
Unless it's the one that Stacy brought up that I
oh, see,
haven't
I
seen.
haven't watched it yet. So or
Is it
your
about
episode yet.
walking?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen.
Oh, and here I thought that I've got to figure it out. Yes. The
That's
movie.
okay. It's okay.
So for
We'll
everybody
keep
who's
going.
confused right now, the
Hmm.
movie that I want to talk about is 2014's Wild, which Reese
Yes.
Witherspoon starred in. Um, is Jean-Marc Vallée, who did
Hmm.
Dallas
Dallas
Buyers
Buyers Club.
Club and the HBO miniseries
Big
Big
Little
Little
Lies.
Lies. So
Hmm.
there's so for people who have listened to some podcasts I've been on and whatnot, know that I'm a big hiker and I love the mountains, and it's a really I want to say sort of like a spiritual place for me, and it's the place I flee to when I'm not doing well.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
recently, a few weeks ago, there were some, I'm not going to go into real detail, but there were some not nice YouTube comments about me.
Oh dear.
And
Yes.
I knew
Oh,
it
I
was a
know.
thing. Everybody
Hmm.
warned me, like, if you're going to enter this sphere, this is a thing that's going to happen. You're a woman. It's
Hmm.
YouTube. The anonymity of it. It's the internet. And I said something on YouTube that somebody didn't like, and it wasn't that they didn't agree with me. I honestly, everybody's entitled to their opinion. It was the shots they took at in terms of my appearance and the way I present myself, and and
Hmm.
it was just something that, like I said, I had been intellectually prepared that somebody was going to probably say this or do this to me, and but when
Hmm.
the moment it happened, I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, how can
Hmm.
people say these kinds of things about
Right.
people online? Like it was something that hit really hard, and the next day I got in my car and I drove up to Bishop, California, parked my car, and ran into the mountains because there's no internet access up there. There's
Right.
nothing.
Nothing to check.
There's right. They I needed a place to sort of center myself. I needed a place where I wasn't online. I wasn't checking in on that. I wasn't dwelling on that.
Hmm.
I needed a peaceful place, a place that I seek. There's a line from the movie where, like, put yourself in the way of beauty, and for me, that's being out in the wild. And this particular trip was just a couple of days, but
And you're by yourself.
I was by
Okay.
myself. Yep, I have no trouble doing that. I have a group of friends that I used to hike and backpack with all the time,
Uh-huh.
like in my 20s, but most of them have gone on to get married and have kids, and so
Sure.
they are not as available. But I wasn't going to let that stop me from doing it. And there's I love going with people, but I love going by myself too,
Hmm.
because there is, I mean, the best word really is spirituality. There's just nature has a way of like rendering so much else meaningless, or not meaningless, but like it won't let me put as much meaning on it as I'm prone to do, unfortunately.
Right.
And it's a place where I can concentrate on myself. I can concentrate on the beauty around me, and just find myself in a more balanced way.
I want to know, when you go by yourself, you've done this before, obviously, and you're experienced. How do you make it so it's not like you're not in a 127-hour situation? Like, do you have like a wristband that's like, this is my GPS tracker, someone knows where I am, or how does that work? Because I would like you to not ever be lost and we can't find you.
Yes, no, that I take the precautions. Like
Okay.
my dad's an amateur mountaineer. I get this sort of proclivity from him,
Hmm.
and they are very adamant. Like, if I'm going to the mountains, they want phone calls before I leave. They want to know which trails I'm going to be on, and I can also approximate generally. I know I can hike if I'm backpacking about 10 miles a day, and I know that this is likely where I'm going to camp, and so I can, like,
Hmm.
lay it out so that, like, if I go missing, you, people can go back and look at the plan and know where I would have been, so they could come and
Okay.
find me fairly easily. I don't have a GPS, but I do have what's called a spot, which is like an emergency transponder type thing.
Okay.
So as long as you program it ahead of time, you can send out. It's kind of like a text type of thing.
Okay.
And again, they in almost any location, it would be able to find me and send a rescue. But mostly it comes down to planning. Like,
Hmm.
I don't wander in the woods
Right.
per se. Like, even this past trip, like, I just pulled out my book. I have a hiking book, so I've got maps. I've got an entire, my walk-in closet is not like a normal woman's walk-in closet with like clothes and shoes. It's all my camping and hiking gear.
Nice. Mine's costumes.
See, hey, we defy expectations for women with walk-in closets.
Sure.
So I have all of that stuff, and so I just looked up, some trails I knew I wanted to hit, knew that they would be relatively easy to find. It wasn't going to be,
Hmm.
off trail on precarious mountain peaks per se. Like I've done those things, but really well planned out in advance. And I'll never do a really serious off trail hike by myself. I will always make sure I have somebody with me for those.
Okay.
But even something like Cheryl Strayed did in the movie, that's the Pacific Crest Trail. It is one of the most
That's a
easily
big deal.
marked trails in the world. Now, there is a part in the book which, and this does happen, when it snows and you're the first person out
Oh,
after
you
it
can't
snows, you might not be
see
able to
it.
see on the
Hmm.
ground. Usually there's marks on trees and things like
Okay.
that. And there's a moment where she finds one and she's like relieved. So, I mean, anything can happen and you have to take it seriously. And I do. Um, but it's the sort of, I'm not going to say that there are dangers, but those don't sway me at all from
Hmm.
not doing it. So
You mentioned camping. Like,
mhm.
so on this trip, did you go and then did you camp and then did you come back, or so
This
set up a camp, I should say? It's not
right.
like camping, I would
We
think.
yeah, it's referred to as backpacking.
Hmm.
When you have 40-50 pounds on your back, including a tent and meals for days or whatnot, and you hike so far, you drop your pack, you set up your tent, you sleep for the night, and then you pack it all up, and then you keep going. I didn't do
Hmm.
that this time. I hurt my back earlier this year, so I have
Hmm.
not been backpacking since I hurt my back. I've just been day hiking. So this trip was, I stayed in a
Hmm.
motel and got up at 5 in the morning, drove up to the trailhead, hiked 15 miles, stayed out there all day,
Hmm.
came back, stayed at the hotel, did that.
Was
But
there
I
any specific thing that triggered your back, or was it just like, I mean, me, I get
getting
old
old.
and like things are happening now.
Yes, yeah.
Lots of things are happening.
Unfortunately, it's generally the getting old aspect.
Okay.
I have a general workout regimen, but sometimes you
Hmm.
fall off of it. And then earlier this year, I was getting back into it, and I sort of didn't ease back into it. I just like
Hmm.
picked up where I left off, and overdid it. And one morning I woke up and I was like, oh, wow, I can't move. Like this
Yeah.
isn't good. So yeah, there was a whole process with that.
Man, getting old.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine like continuing to get old and like what aches and pains I'm
I
gonna
know, or they're still
endure
coming.
later. They're all coming. It's all downhill from when I turned what 30. Like I feel like that was a peak, and now it's like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
it's the start of the down slash uphill to the eventual demise of my life. But, but to bring it back to happy things, um, I how long have you been hiking then? Like you must have started when you were a kid because you said your father's amateur.
Yeah, we did a little bit when we were kids. It's actually something I slightly regret. We did a lot of camping, and some hiking, but my dad's more of a mountaineer, which the difference is he likes he likes extreme whiteout, cold, icy, ice pick,
Okay. Oh
crampons,
dear.
whole conditions. I'm like,
He likes
we're
movies like Touching the Void.
basically
Or wait, is that what it's
very
called?
like the all cliffhanger, all of them like
Okay.
that's he's climbed Mount Rainier, he's climbed Mount Whitney in the winter time, I've climbed it in the summertime. So he's much more hardcore than I am
Hmm.
in that respect. Hiking started more out of, so you moved to LA at 22. I moved out with my best friend. We were both PAs, which basically meant no money. It was like rent
Yes.
and like maybe a
Production
little bit of
assistant.
groceries, and that
Hmm.
was it. So no gym memberships. So we would just go hiking in Griffith Park because we
Okay.
lived pretty close to that. And we discovered that we just like liked it. We liked being outdoors. It was a good chance to catch up on the week. It was fresh air and as fresh as you can have in LA.
Sure.
And it led to making friends who also really enjoyed it. And then we started branching out. We'd go into the Santa Monica Mountains, and then we'd go into the San Gabriel Mountains, and then in the Sierra Nevadas. And we went and did a whitewater rafting camping trip in the Grand Canyon. We've
Hmm.
camped on Catalina Island. I've gone to the point where my best friend, myself, and two other of our friends went and climbed Kilimanjaro in Africa
Whoa.
several years ago. And I've
It's
been
a
to
big
the
deal.
Himalayas, and I've been to the Alps. So
Wow. I've
um,
only been to the Himalayas on the DuckTales Nintendo game, which was a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's tons of fun. I will not fault you for that.
Oh man. Wow. You've been to a lot of places. I'm
Yeah.
totally an indoor girl. I like
Yep.
I'm indoors. That's why I like movies.
and that's the flip side of me. And I'm an editor, which basically means
You're
I am
indoors.
locked in a tiny little
Uh-huh.
dark room, no windows, several monitors, 10 hours a day. So like the flip is I need to be outside on the weekends. I
Sure.
need the opposite. I need that cleansing sort of feeling
Mhm.
that hiking and getting outside and I love that like hiking's painful. Any exercise is painful, but like
Mhm.
there's an earned quality to the pain. There's so many moments in the movie, to take it back to the movie too, where like she gets such glee out of like the first time she's able to use her camp stove correctly, or she gets over a boulder, or
Sure.
like, she makes it past the first 100 miles. And I'm like, and I totally understand that feeling because
Mhm.
it's the balance of pain to pleasure when you're backpacking is pretty much 50-50 because it hurts. That's heavy.
Yeah.
You're going up steep inclines at high elevations, shortness of breath, the ballistas on your feet, all that's true. But then you make it to that view or the top of that peak or to that alpine lake, and you set your bag down, you take your boots off, you put them your feet in the water, and you just look around you and you listen. And
Yeah.
there's just a beautiful serenity to nature, and that like you look at the world and you go, this is, I can't believe I get to live
Right.
in this kind of beautiful place. And it's why I'm a like I have my charities that I donate to, but one of the big ones is the national parks and the state parks and the
Mm.
Sierra Club. And I'm
Perfect.
I'm a huge proponent of saving what little wilderness we have left. So
State parks are important.
yes, they don't get nearly as much attention.
Uh, Thinking about just camping, hiking, all that stuff, I think about the people that I see when I go to Yosemite and they're like, their camp is like hanging off of a rock
Oh yeah.
somehow. And I'm like, that, I don't know how that works. I am not,
Physics, that's
I
all I
feel like
know.
there's certain things in life you just feel like I have to be born into that in order to like really participate. Like hiking, for example,
Mhm.
like my parents didn't hike or camp,
Sure.
never camped. And then there was like boating, people that own boats and stuff. I was like, I feel
It's
like that's
true.
something you have to be born into. Like, I'm
Or
not
just
that you couldn't obviously do it.
if you had the drive, then you really wanted to get into something
Mm-hmm.
like that. But yeah, usually it's the thing we find, the things we like and that we're good at because we're exposed to them in some way when we're
Right.
younger. And then it's how much you choose to pursue
Right.
it.
I
And
was exposed to a lot of hotels and travel because of my mom.
there you go.
And I was always like, why are we here, mom? She's like, I want to see this. And I was like, okay, why do I have to be here if you want to see it? You know, like, man, I was a terrible kid. Let's get into our final question, which is what is a film that helps you through difficult times?
This one was relatively easy too, in the sense of, so when I'm going through a bad time, or I've battled depression for years as well, there's a certain set of criteria I want from the movie that I'm
Mm-hmm.
about to watch. And a lot of times it has to, like, I do need sort of a happy ending quality to it, because more often than not, I'm in a dark place because something hasn't worked out in some way, or
Mm-hmm.
romantically is bad history in that department for me. So
Sure.
I need that quality to it, but I also need inevitably to cry. So I need to
Mm-hmm.
allow myself to cry. And a movie that sort of combines all sorts of these aspects for me is Ang Lee's Sense and Sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Jane Austen fan. I've been reading her novels since I was, I don't know, 12 or 13. And there's the romantic comedy interpersonal relationship quality to all of her novels. And
Right.
we all wish that we were Lizzie Bennett. I'm not. I am Eleanor Dashwood. Honestly, like, if you know anything about Jane Austen heroines, that's the one I would relate to the most, and she's the older sister in Sense and
Okay.
Sensibility. And there's so many things about the movie that, I'm an older sister. My sister, Sarah, is a couple years younger than me. She's the more outgoing social butterfly one. I was the more introverted one, the quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote smart one. She's incredibly intelligent. These were just the, stereotypes you stick yourself in when you're teenage girls and your
Right.
sister's so close in age. And I always saw her as Marianne as being the one all the guys liked and everybody flocks to and is the romantic. She loves Shakespeare and all of that stuff. And I was always the bit of the pragmatist and the one who just never thought that, romance and those aspects of life like that. I never had any illusions about me
Right.
getting those kinds of things. And she does in the movie, and I haven't in life. So there's that. But there's a quality to her perseverance that I love. And
Hmm.
there's a scene where she admits to her younger sister that she has been in a lot of pain too because she had fallen in love with Hugh Grant's character, who was,
Who wouldn't?
I know, right? Especially in that era of Hugh Grant, late 90s. But he already betrothed to somebody else, and she finds out about it, but
Hmm.
she doesn't tell anybody, not even her sister, until this particular scene. And her sister's like, "How could you live with so much weighing on you?" And it's the
Mm.
first time Eleanor, who's played by Emma Thompson, who's brilliant, breaks down and cries and says, like, how could you assume that I don't feel things? Because that's what the younger sister doesn't think the older one does. And
Aw.
and it's like, and every time I completely break down because like I feel like I do that a lot. Like I
Hmm.
hold it in, I hold it together, I do everything I can, like I concentrate on all the good, and I don't acknowledge that it's okay to be upset about the things I'm upset with. That's my biggest issue with my depression over the years has been feeling guilty about it
Yeah.
because I don't feel like I have wonderful parents who are still together. There's no past incident, inciting incident. There's nothing in my life. People would look at my life and go, I think people would look at my life and go, you have no right to be depressed. And I
Oh,
fought with
I
that for
always hate
years.
that. I
It
hate
was a
that.
big thing for me.
People do that with celebrities too, and I'm like,
Hmm.
why wouldn't they have a right to be depressed? Like, I
Yeah,
don't. I was like, just because they have money doesn't mean that is happiness.
right,
It drives me nuts. I was like, I feel like the only person who's allowed to be depressed is like some person that has no family and lives under a bridge and has no home or something like that.
right.
Has nothing,
Yeah,
has absolutely nothing. Like
yep,
that's the only person that's allowed. But I feel like society also like really only shows the good at all times, like
right.
especially with social media,
Yeah, I know we only put
and
our
it's
best foot
really hard.
forward online.
It's really hard. That's why I try to like say when things suck and let people know like,
Yeah.
but I don't always want to be the downer either,
Yep.
so it's a
Yeah.
hard balance, but like yeah, life has those moments, and it's I feel like as a whole society is starting to recognize and be a little more open about depression and telling people it's okay,
Right.
and once you start like saying that you are suffering, other people will come forward and say, hey, I'm there too, like I know what you're going through, and that can be really helpful.
It's definitely been much better once I sort of opened up to different people about it, and the overwhelming experience was, I've been through that too, and it's like you don't even realize, or a lot of my life I didn't realize how many people. I mean, it's that teenage cliche too, is
Hmm.
all teenagers are hurting on the inside, and
Oh
like
yeah.
I didn't realize that when I was a teenager, and I just held it in and held it together, and you know put it was all about grades and school, and I put all of
Hmm.
that forward and I buried the rest of it, and that's come out in not so great ways later, in my 20s and
Right.
even into my 30s. But what has helped the most has been that, like, you know most of my friends and acquaintances and people that I know have been through it to some degree or another too, and that holding it in is honestly the worst thing you can do. So
It is. Gosh, I had just this past weekend where my husband's like, I feel like you're depressed. I was like, no, I'm depressed right now. I was like, I'll tell you exactly why I'm depressed. Like
yeah,
sometimes there's like reasons for it in ways that
right, you
why,
can recognize it.
and other times there's not. And this time I was like, I know exactly why this time.
Mhm.
And it's because there's a lot that's right on the cusp of happening that like I feel like I need to close certain chapters of my life, and they're so close together right now, and it's all coming to a head, and we're almost to the other side of it, but
Right.
I just have to get there, and I'm just dreading closing certain doors, and like sad about that, but knowing like I need to move on. Like I need to go into something else.
yeah.
Not talking about this show, and I'm not talking about this channel. So everyone knows I'm not closing these doors.
No. But it's hard not like the anticipation and expectation and like knowing things that are about to come to a head is
Mhm.
always the worst part. It's
Yes.
like it's getting over the hump, and then once you get there, like you just have to like keep your eye on
Yeah.
that and know that
Mhm.
once you get there, it will you can breathe again. But it's
Right.
that it's very hard to right in that moment before it happens.
Yeah.
I've been there.
So I have like 2 more weeks and then
Okay.
it'll be, well, maybe it could be extended longer depending on certain life things, but should be about 2 more weeks and then it'll be like, thank goodness. I can breathe now.
There you go.
We all can breathe now. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. We talked about three main films today. A film that inspires you is Apollo 13, film that helps you through, or I skipped the one. Film that triggers a memory for you, perhaps painful, perhaps happy, was Wild. And for our final one, which is what is a film that helps you through difficult times, is Sense and Sensibility, which I sometimes mix up with Pride and Prejudice.
A lot of people do.
Just based on the
I
name.
know.
It's just like, oh, that's gonna be tough.
Jane Austen, come on, you could have done better, right?
Mhm. Yeah, let's get it. I mean, Mansfield Park. I don't
And
mix that up.
Emma's just
Emma,
straightforward.
like, help me out here, Jane. But yes, thank you so much. And where can everyone that's in the waiting room and everyone that's watching this later find you?
Please find me on Twitter at Rachel J. Cushing. And we can chat. I'm always open to on Twitter.
Yes.
And I'm trying to get onto Instagram. I know it's a thing, and I'm behind the times in
Mm.
social media more often than not. So I'll get there.
Instagram. Here's a little tip for everyone. Instagram and Facebook are the two like biggest platforms that you can reach people
Yeah,
in.
that
Like
makes sense.
Twitter is fun, but it doesn't reach as many people as it possibly can. And
Okay.
Instagram's actually the number one because you have this nice landing page where people can see everything that,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's like, it's good for a brand.
Ah,
It's good
I
for
always
brand
go to
building.
Brienne for the brand stuff. She's got this down.
You guys can find me pretty much all day, every day on Twitter at Miss Movies, Instagram Miss_movies. I was working on a Facebook page, but I don't know if I'm going to do that anymore.
Mm.
But we'll see. We'll see. It doesn't. I have one of the social medias. That's the big one. But anyways, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.